Paul Tuchmann, he's a former federal prosecutor, now an attorney. He's got all this stuff down pat. So, Paul, first of all, it's Frank Isola, Brian Scalabrine. How you doing this morning?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So, when you read this story yesterday, it's obviously a major sports story, a major NBA story. I guess the first question would be, how difficult of a case? I mean, it seems like a pretty complicated case with a lot of people involved. How difficult is it to prove some of this stuff? It's one thing to arrest everyone, indict them. How difficult is it to prosecute and get convictions in this instance?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see. The indictment of the case involving the basketball case doesn't really have a whole lot of detail about what the evidence is that they're going to use. There is some description of text messages, but I think what's more likely is that, I think it's pretty clear that this case is related to the Jontay Porter case that, first became public about a year and a half ago, and that they've been building this case for a while since then. And so well, I don't know this. My assumption is that some of the folks involved in that case will probably have been cooperating with the government. That's just a supposition. I don't want to say that I know that because I don't.
Yeah.
But that's often how the government's going to get a lot of the best evidence in a case like this.
So just for my own sake, yes or no, so the Jontay Porter case kicks this thing off. You start interviewing people, and then other people might name other people involved in doing this and doing that. Here's what I've heard. And is that how, not saying in this case it is the way, but is that how cases are put together and you can get something that becomes bigger across? I mean, you got Florida in one side, Terry Rozier, you have Portland and Chauncey Billups. This is a much bigger thing, but there are in these type of cases, is there a lot of intertwined mingling?
There often is. And so if you have, as a prosecutor and investigator, you get the witness who's in the middle of these things, they can take you in multiple directions. Even better, if you're the government, if you get the witness's phone, you get their email address, right? Then you have a whole wealth of directions you can go in based upon that evidence. And so not saying that I can say for certain about this case, that certainly seems like what happened here. You see that Mr. Pham and Mr. McCormick, who are people who were charged in the same case together with Jontay Porter, they're also named in this indictment. And so, certainly when the government's investigating those folks, they probably learned, whether from them or from the evidence they got when they were investigating them, about these other cases involving, for example, Terry Rozier.
We'll talk with Paul Tuchmann. He's a former federal prosecutor. Right now, he's a partner at the law firm of Wiggin and Dane. It's located in New Haven and also New York. Paul, when they bring specifically the three people connected with the NBA, Damon Jones, former player, former coach, Chauncey Billups, a current coach of Portland Trail Blazers, and Terry Rozier, a player with Miami. When they bring those guys in and sit them down, and I understand their attorneys already come out, they'll fight the charges. I get it. Everyone's innocent. At what point will you guys would a prosecutor sit them down and say, listen, this is what we have against you. You can go to court. If you're convicted, you could spend 10 to 15 years in jail, or you can cooperate with us and give us other names of people, which unfortunately for the NBA could include other NBA people. Do those discussions take place, and how soon do those discussions take place?
Well, that's for the most part up to defense counsel, right? And acting at the direction of, the client. Certainly some of the lower level people in this indictment are going to be more incentivized because the government's going to be more interested to know what they have to say about other high profile people. And so, well, again, it's up to them, meaning they and their lawyers. I would assume that those folks are going to be reaching out to the government, to at least explore whether the government wants to talk to them, see if they know anything else about other people or perhaps can help them solidify this case. That's something that happens all the time. Again, usually it's going to be starting with the people who are, have a lower profile and are down at the bottom of the totem pole. That's who they usually, expect to talk to first. But it could be, that the defense counsel for any of the defendants wants to do that. They can. Now, the government doesn't have to lay out all that evidence until later if they don't want to. And it becomes with a multi-defendant case like this, the way the prosecutor has an advantage, which is the defendants sort of can be played off against each other to see, well, who's going to come in first? And then the prosecutor can say, well, you're going to get more of a benefit if you come in first. And the defendants don't necessarily know, although they can talk to each other, but they might not trust each other, who is going to make the decision to come in and who is not. One thing I would say, though, and you mentioned like a sentence of 10 to 15 years. Well, the sentence that they could get, any of these defendants, could be theoretically that high under the law if they were convicted. The sentence that they would likely receive is, I would suggest, would be far, far lower than that in a case like this, where there's, no violence. There was in the separate gambling case a suggestion of like violent threats, but not in this case. And so I don't think that kind of situation, is going to lead to a sentence that's expected to be that high. So I think that may, cause particularly people who are at the higher end of the profile scale to think, well, you know what, I have a better shot at fighting the case, or the odds for me make more sense to fight the case. Because even if I'm convicted, well, I may go to jail, it won't be as for long. Nobody ever wants to go to jail for any amount of time. But compared to certain other kinds of cases, the incentives to cooperate are a bit less here, from what I can tell from the indictment.
All right. So just a real quick question. Are you familiar with tanking in the NBA, right? You get the
I
whole
am, yeah.
concept, right? And you get like any given night, anybody could sit out of a game, right? It's like, okay. All right. So here's my question. So let's just like table Terry Rozier and Damian Jones, right? So this whole thing with Chauncey Billups, X-ray cards and machines and all that, like I really doubt that Chauncey Billups, as he's coaching a team, is ordering X-ray tables and all these things. But I can totally see, hey, Chauncey, why don't you use your influence to invite people over to come and play poker, right? And if other people come in and they set it up. Like, where I don't know is did he know or did he not know? Is he getting a cut after the night or whatever the reason? Okay, so first of all, have you heard of things like this? Now, forget NBA, Chauncey Billups, all that stuff. Have you heard of X-ray tables, cards, like, people with like microphones and talking to one another to get a guy who's a billionaire as a marker? Do these things go on in the real world? Because we think in a movies they would go on. And then, like, if you're really thinking like an NBA coach who worked like 18 hours a day, like, how do you, just in your opinion, see Chauncey Billups involved in something like that?
That's a great question. Like I'm not a gambler myself. I would say I don't play poker because I always lose. So, but I do think that it's the kind of thing that I've, seen, I've heard of advertised on the internet, these kinds of devices, right, that have actually, been used. I don't know if they work, but apparently they do, according to the indictment, and they exist. And there are plenty of people in the world, I think, in my experience, who do have a lot of money, who enjoy high stakes wagers, and the idea that they could do that together with celebrities certainly makes sense. And so it all makes sense to me that this could actually happen. And so it doesn't surprise me now. Whether an NBA coach has the time or the wherewithal to be involved in this is a whole other question, right? I mean, it does strike me as surprising, right? It does go back to Terry Rozier also, as well as, why would they do something like this, right? Like, these are folks who are very well compensated. What is the reason that you can think of for that they would get involved in something like this and put themselves at risk this way? Assuming, again, that they knew.
I can help you with that. This is the thing that no one wants to talk about with the NBA. It's like free money is better than made money. And it's like this, it's a mindset. It's like, you should see it. A guy can make like $500,000 playing a game that night, but he's really excited about winning $10,000. It's like, it's exhilarating for some. They feel like they're beating the system. It's why they had that like medical benefits thing where we're getting 10 grand, 15 grand. Like, what is that going to do for your life, right? When you should have like money in the bank. For a guy like Terry Rozier, I'm assuming, and I've seen this throughout my career, it's exhilarating for them to kind of quote unquote beat the system, as opposed to thinking about like the greater good of the long term. So I could see why a Terry Rozier can get caught up in that with his friends. I don't see how like a Chauncey Billups and everything that he's accomplished, he's the Hall of Fame and the coach. I don't see how that, like, it's exhilarating for him.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And that's something that, may come out at a trial if we get that far, or, in the course of the case. But it's a very good question.
We're talking with Paul Tuchmann. He's an attorney, former federal prosecutor. So, Paul, there's an incident in here from April 6th of 2023. I read the indictment, and two of these guys, co-conspirators, they got a tip from a then Orlando Magic player. And in the indictment, it says that the Magic player is known to the grand jury. And the tip was that all the starters would not play against Cleveland that night.
Ooh,
Well, I think we
sorry.
lost.
I think
Yeah.
we
So
lost
just,
it for a second there.
yeah. So it's just the idea that, you're playing one night and you tell your buddies, yeah, we got a home and we got a back-to-back against Cleveland, or there's a day in between. We're going to play them twice, but we're only playing in one game. The next game we're
Right.
going to sit out. Could you see and you just mentioned that cavalier to somebody and it turns into something bigger a couple years down the road. Is that would you consider that something that's on the level of being prosecuted?
No, certainly not. Well, again, to the extent that the player I think it's important to note in the indictment that Orlando Magic player is not identified as a co-conspirator, right? So there's no allegation that that player knew that that tip was going to be used in order to help somebody, beat DraftKings or FanDuel, whoever it was. There's no allegation about that. So in that case, right, there's nothing illegal. Perhaps the violation of NBA rules, I don't know, but there's nothing illegal about just somebody saying to someone else, oh, we're going to sit our people tonight, even if that's not public. If you know, however, that whoever you're giving that information to, whoever they're giving that information to, is going to use that information to make a bet based upon that information that other people don't know, what the government is saying here through this case is, we can and we will charge you with a crime if we catch you doing that. And so, I mean, if I was an NBA player, I mean, it's the same thing. You talk about what appears to be LeBron James telling someone about he's not going to play. And then now he is identified, not by name, in this indictment. It would make me think long and hard about who I talk to, about what I'm doing. And it's going to create, I mean, if you're smart as a player, real disincentives to share that kind of information on a casual basis with anyone. Because even if you can't be prosecuted and wouldn't be prosecuted if the government couldn't say that you knew what that information was going to be used for, why would you even risk that? Why would you risk getting dragged into something like this?
Yeah.
It's just no longer worth it.
Well, I was going to say, I apologize for the interruption. What I was going to say, so this Magic player, because they did say that the investigation is ongoing. So is that player being investigated? Is he cooperating with the government, or you don't even think that, or you think that he's already been cleared and it was something where he passed along information when he didn't realize what he was doing in that moment?
It could be any of those things. It's possible that the prosecutors have investigated that and spoken to him, and they believe that he didn't know. And so therefore, he's essentially, for the purposes of, as you say, cleared. But it's also possible that they didn't want to, tip that player off before they announced these arrests, and that they just didn't know one way or the other. And now that the arrests have happened, they're going to continue investigating. We just don't know that. It's not really evident.
So the timing of this is really strange to me. Obviously, this has been going on for a while, 2020, 2022, 2023 is like all these things that have happened. Why wait till opening night to do it? Is there a little bit of attention getting by the prosecutor? I'm not saying they're not doing their job, but they're just trying to, it just seems weird that when the NBA finally kicks off, there are so many dead weeks of the NBA. Why now? Is it targeted to, in the biggest moment where the NBA is kicking off, let's take them down at that point? Is there the bigger this case is, the better it is for us?
I mean, I'm skeptical if that's the case, but I can't say for sure. What I would say, though, is that they wanted to announce this case, the two cases together at the same time. And if you look at the indictment involving, the earnest indictment, the one involving the basketball cases, right? That conduct, at least what they're alleging here, ended in 2024. But if you look at the case involving the gambling, that was going up until right now. And so I think the issue is that they were continuing to investigate and had an active investigation of the gambling case. And they didn't want to take down the basketball case because it would interfere with their ongoing investigation of the basketball case. Why they chose to take it down right now as opposed to a month ago or 2 months ago, that I can't say. But the reason why they waited, at least past when the basketball case conduct was over, it seems pretty clear is that they were in the middle of continuing their investigation of the poker stuff.
All right, Paul, before we let you go, we knew you grew up as a Celtic fan. So who's your all-time favorite Celtic, and where does Brian Scalabrine rank on that list?
Top 10?
I'll say, like I'm a child of the 80s. It's got to be number 33 is my all-time favorite Celtic. I would say, I would say Brian is probably in my top three favorite announcers after Johnny
Let's
Most
go.
and
See?
Mike Gorman. How about that? Is that good?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take
All right.
that. I'll take that. So did we lose Frank again? Okay. We're having
man.
tons of technical difficulty. We think the FBI is tapping our show right now, trying to get inside information. We're no rats. I'm telling you, we're not rats on this show, but go ahead, Frank.
No, thanks, Paul. We appreciate it, and I'm glad Brian cracked your top three. That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.